On today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about how I go about identifying high-value clients or targets and how I use a client qualification scorecard to do it. Enjoy. How old are you going to be before you start to experience life like you want it? I want to tell you right now, whether you like it or not, there is a better way to do business. Hi everyone, welcome to the Business for Builders podcast. My name's Max. I am your host. I'm the ambitious founder of EliteBusinessAdvisory.com, customized coaching for contractors. Good to have you in the room. Welcome to you if you're in YouTube land. Welcome to you if you're driving down the road and having a listen to us on the podcast. Appreciate you lending us your ear. If this is your first, if this is the first time you've joined us, I hope you take something away of value and hopefully it makes a difference in your business. Don't forget, like and subscribe. One of these drops every week. And get across to Business for Builders VIP, good community building over there. That's a good place to just kick around some questions and cross-reference and maybe get a bit of an understanding of what else is out there. So, and if you're able to sort of help out in that way because you've got a little bit of experience and you've got a bit of success under your belt, then I'm sure your contribution would be appreciated. Right, I think that's all of the housekeeping. Today, the next 3 episodes, it's funny, as I sort of sit down and I think about, when I'm dealing either in my own construction business or I'm dealing with EBA clients, there's always some standouts, in the period of days, weeks and months where I go, that would be a really good topic to chat about on the show. And as I began to prepare for an episode, what happened was there was, I was sort of figuring out what I was going to chat about with you today. And as I did that, it became obvious that there was actually 3 episodes that would just run into each other. So this is episode 240. I'm sure you're going to like what I've got to share with you today. And the next 2 episodes are going to tie in very much. They're going to dovetail in with each other. So, stay tuned for those. And I'm sure it's going to get you some value. So, what I'm going to chat with you today about is, and this come about from working with an EBA client where they had a good amount of lead gen. Like there was a good amount of leads on the table. and there was, challenges with having to ascertain who are we going to work with first, or what are the high value targets? What are the ones that are kind of mid-range and what are the ones where we're not really, we don't have high hopes for? And I think, it's one thing for me to stand here. I think last week we talked about lead generation. It's one thing for me to stand here and talk about getting leads. But then are we creating a fire hose situation whereby we've got so many leads to deal with? What we've just done is created for ourselves another headache. Now, the reason you've got a headache is because you don't have systems, tools, or resources to be able to go, oh, what do I do with 15 leads that have just come in the last 2 weeks? Okay, and what that does, and this is where there's guys and gals sitting in the audience today that are basically saying, well, I don't have enough leads. Now, what they're not aware of is when they do get enough leads, it's going to then highlight or expose their program to another deficiency. And this is why, as business owners, guys and gals, we have to have our head on a swivel. You identify there's one issue that's facing you right now where you go, I need to deal with that. Now, what you do is the higher the levels, bigger the devil. So again, you go and break through that ceiling, and I guarantee you what it's going to do off the back of that, when you solve that problem or that challenge, what it's going to do is it's going to open up another challenge, and that's kind of the way the game is played. That's business. So, what I've got for you today, if you want to email me, max@elitebusinessadvisory.com, I will send you a PDF version of the scorecard that I've developed, okay? It's just going to give you some clarity around when you sit down unemotionally, you're able to objectively figure out, okay, how does this client rate? Okay, what's their score? And it will help you, I guess, identify where you should spend your time first and the most, okay? So, right, we're going to get stuck into it. Client qualifications for builders and general contractors, okay? Because time is the most valuable thing. You can't buy it back. So this week, as you look at your program and you go, right, what am I going to do either, get done this week, or what am I going to achieve next week? we've got to make sure that when we deploy our own resource personally, that we're not spending time or investing time in the wrong areas or with the wrong people, okay? So basically, efficient time management, right, is what it's going to require. Now, I know builders that really, I'm a big fan, and you probably heard me talk about it, I'm a big fan of, blocking out my calendar, having set days and set times where I've got to go, right now I'm in, accounts payable, or I'm in sales and admin, or whatever the case is. But I'm very clear, obviously my client meetings, I designate those and I block some time front and back just to ensure I don't get sidetracked before the meeting and I don't get interrupted at the back end of a meeting. So I always make sure I've got buffers in there. So this is about time management, okay? And so when we're talking about efficient time management, we've got to be very selective in the type or in the clients that we deal with. Who are we going to invest our time in? Now, just while I talk about that, I think in the last episode, I talked about a couple that walked into this office, and I talked to them about they wanted a basement remodel done, and I talked to them about what the cost of that would be, and I think I mentioned 150 grand. Now, they walked out of there, they lured me into doing a meeting, so this will be good. See, this is where I get caught because I'm Mr. Generous. Obviously, I spend a lot of my time, giving value, and I believe people at what they say. So when they're in the office here, I'm saying to them, your basement remodel or renovation is going to cost about 150 grand. And they give me the head nod. And then they're like, well, there's a time crunch and we've got to get this over the line. And so I buy into that. And I think I've done all of my due diligence. I've asked the right questions. I've talked to them about budget. They were very responsive. They liked the website, etc., etc. And so I went up there, walked through. Everyone's happy, and as it is, right? And then what I did is I spent 3 hours on a Friday afternoon putting that, I would call it a quote. I mean, it was $160,000 quote, so it wasn't cheap. But then they come back to me on the Monday and said our institution for purchasing the property and doing improvements can only loan us $20,000. So when I'm sitting here talking to you about time management and scoring or qualifying clients, now, do I normally charge for that? Just side note, I should have said to them, it's going to be $75 an hour, minimum 2 hours, visual inspection, verbal report. You don't own the house yet. You're going to pay me. Now, I even said to them, because they seem very trusting of me and I trusted them, that's the law of reciprocity. I said to them, I would waive the charge. I would pop up to their house. It's about 8 minutes away from the office. And I would give them that proposal they need to get the finance through. And so what I failed to do, because I actually didn't know that there was a limitation, I told them it was going to be 150. I expected that they were going to then, reciprocate some honesty around numbers. And clearly they were taken aback when I gave them a quote for 160,000, which included all the fire rating and fire separation that's required by code. And so when I look back on that, the scorecard that I've now developed for a client, because of some other similar challenges, it's like, right, what are we trying to do? We're trying to evaluate. That would have been in the financial side of things, but I never thought to ask about what's the limitation from your financial institution. You need to get back to me before I drive to your house, let alone give you a quote. See, this is why when you get your marketing and branding sorted out and your lead gen sorted out, if you're not careful, what happened to me could happen to you. You tick all the boxes, everything's honky-dory, you think it's fine, and then you get blindsided and you go, what a fool. So it's just those kinds of micro failures in my life that have helped me just sharpen up. And you see, I continue to get sharper, because you know what happens the next time someone comes in here and starts sweet talking me? Their priority is to get a document. My priority is to get a contract. Two different things. Okay? So until we can get something in common as far as an outcome goes, and I get the information from them and I, would start to demand honesty, is that instead of just being a yes man just because they want to get what they want, he's like, he said to me, are you sure it's not meant to be 17,000? I think the quote was 169,000 or something. And I said, no, dude, it's 169,000 including tax. And so, you know, what we're trying to do is, and this is why client qualification matters. Right, so I'm going to quickly run through the 4 sections of the client qualification scorecard. Remember, email me, max@elitebusinessadvisory.com. It's on the website, elitebusinessadvisory.com, my email. So if you're driving down the road and you can't write it down, just remember that. Go back and shoot me an email. Okay, so the 4 sections that I've got outlined in the scorecard is budget and financial fit is the first section. Project scope and complexity is the second section. Timeline and urgency is the section number 3, and section number 4 is client attitude and compatibility. Okay, so I'm going to write some stuff on the board here, but I've got ahead of myself. But basically, for budget and financial fit, that's really what we want to sort out here. So budget and financial fit. That's the first thing. Project scope and complexity. Right, complexity. And I can speak to each of these based on that negative experience I've had. And then client attitude and compatibility. Right. So let me just write up here. So obviously we want efficient time management. This is why we're doing it. And I've got to remember that I've got to write on a board here and not just waffle on. Give you guys something you can get your eyeballs on. Maximize profitability, because not every lead is one that's going to be is worth pursuing. And then obviously why client qualifications matter is to reduce stress and disorganization. Oh gosh, tell I'm not a school teacher. Right, so just to recap: efficient time management, maximize profitability, reduce stress and disorganization. Excuse my back. Okay, right, the 4 sections here we're going to cover now. Right, so we've got to evaluate where the client has whether or not the client has the financial capacity for the project. Does the proposed budget align with your pricing model? Now, what I did wrong, as I just outlined above, is that I talked to these people. I said it's going to be 150 grand. What they didn't maybe know, and certainly what I didn't think to ask, was is there a limit on the financial extension based off the back of the finance for the purchase of the home as it relates to the improvement of the house? That I didn't ask. So me making that little cock up is going to hopefully help you avoid that. Okay, so if the client's budget doesn't meet your pricing expectations, they're obviously not going to be able to move forward. And in the event there's scope creep or there's some, obviously extra cost, they're not going to be able to facilitate that. And that puts you in a position of vulnerability. Right, project scope and complexity. So we've got to assess, you've got to figure out in your own head whether the project matches your skills and expertise. For me, having been around for a little while, if someone said to me, hey, I need you to come and quote for me to build a 5-story walk-up, well, at this point in this country, as of today's date, end of May 2025, we don't officially, at Smith & Sons Coldstream, have a builder's license to do new residential. However, even so, that's a commercial build. I would say that would be a different license credential, right? And so this is where it's not like I haven't got the licensing to do a 5-story walk-up, nor do I have the experience to build a 5-story walk-up. However, if you come to me and said, I've got a 5-plex or a 10-plex townhouse development that I want you to quote on, I've got the experience and the skills and the expertise, I still don't have the credential. Okay, but if you come to me, like we've got this one client that we're jamming with at the moment that'll kick off beginning of September, so in a couple of months, that's a 2nd story addition. That is something that can be built in this province without a builder's license, ironically enough, all the Aussies and Kiwis, or the Aussies particularly, go, what the heck? That's true. That's a significant, that's a, I don't know if I can put a number on it just yet, but it's going to be a $900,000 plus build. That can be done so that I have the skills, the expertise, and the experience. And in this province, I don't need a builder's license to do that. So you've got to figure out, when you're looking at projects, when you're marketing, you've got to make sure that you're attracting leads that you're able to do. Now, if you're a new guy, or you've been, in the building game for 3 or 4 years, finish your apprenticeship 3 or 4 years in the game, and you want to go out, I would encourage you to not go big too quick. I would say do the smaller jobs, work on the technique. Okay, maybe you won't make as much money, but at least you're getting an idea of how it feels to run a building company. I think my first job was about 50 grand. It was in Robertson, on the south side of Brisbane. And it was, we did an ensuite upstairs, and actually we did 2 bathrooms upstairs and some other improvements to the general area upstairs. And so that was nice because I was involved in that every day. I only had one job at a time, and I was able to sort of work with all the different trades throughout the whole process, right from the beginning when I started the demo, right through to completion. Okay, so you've got to ensure that the project does align with your business strengths as well. Right, and section number 3, timeline and urgency. Okay, I always ask clients, not when would you like the project started, when does this project need to be finished by? That's what I do, because I start reverse engineering then. Okay, so what I did is I sat down with a client last week and talked to her about her main floor renovation. It started out to be just, hey, we want to do the kitchen, but then it went into the bathroom and then the ensuite and then bedroom upgrade and floorings throughout and a full repaint. So all of a sudden we've got ourselves a $200,000 job. What I said to her is, because of where we are right now and knowing what is to happen, I know that I said to her, we've got to have you in. If we start this year, we want to have you in by Christmas. And she said, of course, that'd be great. So when I started to look at the timeline for the build, the timeline for not so much building approval, because it's a main floor reno, so we're not doing anything structural, but nonetheless, between costing, getting it to her making a decision, and then us getting through the build, say 4 months, I said we could run out of time quickly if the selection process takes 4 or 6 weeks, depending like how we go. And so the longer we take to get the preliminaries out the way will delay the start time, which potentially will affect the completion time. It will. And so for me, I needed to know. Now, at the same time, side note, so here's what happens. I felt, because of the way she was talking about 2 things. Or maybe I should just sell the house now before we do the reno. That's a red flag to me. That's just like like massive. And then the other thing was, she thought, well, if I invest a couple $100,000 and I want to live here for 5 years, what is the, what's going to be my return on investment going to be? Now, I'm not a real estate agent and I don't have a crystal ball. The batteries are flat. But what I said to her, because straight away I went, right, time out in my mind. I'm like, time out. Before I go down the rabbit hole of the whole renovation main floor thing, right, I said to her, I'll tell you what you're going to do. I need you to have a chat with my realtor buddy about the state of the union as it relates to your home now and the potential sale if it got listed today. And then if you were to invest $200 to make these improvements, what would be the ROI, the property value perhaps? What would be the forecast in 5 years? And so what I did is I joined those 2 dots and I said, you need to have a chat with her and you need to get some information out of him, figure out what's going on there. I'll circle back. And so this is why in May, you'd sort of think, what, a main floor renovation finished just before Christmas? Why does it take so long? This is why. See, so what I did is I put a time out on doing what I know to do, because if I went down that rabbit hole and invested 6 weeks of my life trying to get this, and then she got cold feet because she's always thinking about, the other option, that would be a distraction. So I paused what I was doing. I've got that thing sorted out. And then once we get that clear, she'll either be like, yep, I'm going to sell now, or yep, I think the investment is worth it, or nope, the investment is not worth it. We're just going to live here as it is for 5 years and then sell it. Okay. And so I'm very, because on one hand, I'm trying to act in my best interest and not be overly generous, unlike what I did with the other couple about the basement, where I was, I basically run into that thinking that I had identified all the red flags and had it sorted out, but clearly I did not. Okay, so that's why timeline and urgency, and then it helps me stack in order of priority. So if someone says to me, I need a kitchen reno done by the end of August versus someone that needs, a basement remodel done by the end of November, I automatically then can lean on that urgency and go, okay, if we are to get that kitchen remodel done, I know it's about 6 to 8 weeks before I can get cabinets on site. It's 2 to 3 weeks to get the countertops if we're doing hard surface countertops on site. This is the timeline. We've got to make a move on selections. I think the kitchen's going to cost you around about the 70 to 90 grand mark. How do you feel about that? Like, this is what I'm asking. Questions are the answers. Questions will help you reveal. And you've got to be sure that you're asking all the questions, because I clearly did not. Even questions that you don't know to ask, which I do now, learn something every day. I've got to make sure that I'm getting the information and the feedback, because the more investigative construction, that you do, in other words, asking questions about the project, the sooner you'll be able to pick up like some of the nuances or some of the subtleties where the clients maybe are being a little bit coy, because you're going to start to expose the truth, and that's important. Okay. And then the last section there is client attitude and compatibility. So, you've got to sort of gauge how well you and the client communicate. I think I talked about this a little while ago, and it works pretty much everywhere, whether it's a football team, whether it's a rock and roll band, whether it's, a builder and the client. There's got to be this trust and chemistry. And I think it's got to be chemistry first. How well do you get on with that person? And then, of course, the trust factor has got to be there. There's got to be that, transparency, openness, and in some cases, you've got to have a little bit of faith that, that person is acting in accordance with your core values and your culture. If you've got a client who's difficult to communicate with or has unrealistic demands, that can be a challenge to work with and lead to frustration and potential conflicts. So I was just wondering, as it relates, right. So they're the 4 sections that are really bundled in. So down below here, we've got another, obviously, part of client qualifications is managing the leads efficiently. So you want to be able to sort of, prioritize how you go about it. So to help us manage that, it's important that we have some lead scoring mechanism, right? Which is probably the scorecard document there that's got the 4 sections already built in. So shoot me an email. Obviously, digital tools. And that will also help you in that regard. And then the last one, this is probably the most important. Know when to say no. And I think that's important. Alex Hormozi's made the comment that what defines you is not what you say yes to, it's what you say no to. And so I think that, we're out karting, and I might have mentioned this in the last episode, maybe not. But, I talked to another, he's actually one of the racers down there, and he's actually in the consultancy coaching world as well. And I said, what do you do with a client who says they're stressed out of their mind and that they need to de-stress? He said, if you want to de-stress, do less. And it was a little bit too obvious for me. I thought, well, I could have come up with that. But as when I first come to this country, I was sort of semi-retired. And I remember back then, and I'm thinking, oh, nobody knows me. Nobody wants to talk to me. I got no business with anyone. Life is pretty boring. Now, the thing was, there was no stress then. So somewhere in between semi-retirement and doing what I do now, where I might be saying to myself, oh, I'm feeling a little bit stressed. I think somewhere in the middle there, I've got to identify whereabouts that we have that middle ground where we can go, I'm comfortable at this stress level. In other words, this load that I'm carrying right now is something that I can deal with. And so that's important to make sure, because we're talking about durability and sustainability. We want to make sure that we're not just here as a flash in the pan or a one-hit wonder, that we're going to be here for a little while. So lead scoring mechanism, that'll be on the client qualification scorecard. Now, digital tools, I've got to be careful when I talk about, using digital tools to qualify, because some clients that are in our preferred client profile aren't going to be completely savvy with how I want to communicate. And that's okay. I've just got to pivot to suit. But they need to tell me that, hey, Max, I'd really just happy just do an email. I don't really want to communicate via JobTread. And I'm like, all right, why is that? Oh, because it's too scattered and it's too hard to deal with and makes me feel uncomfortable or whatever. So that's why it's, in that case, you've got to tread a little bit carefully. But obviously you can automate certain communications, because what I'm trying to do, this whole talk is about identifying the players, separating them from the pretenders and the time wasters and the tire kickers and the wood ducks and the price checkers. You got me? So it's not like we're trying, oh, Max, you're making this all technical. I'm not trying to make it technical. What I'm trying to do is set tripwires and safety nets whereby we invest our resource, the most valuable one, which is our time, with the right human beings and the right clients to achieve the greatest result. Right. So in closing, client qualifications are crucial for running an efficient and profitable building company. By using a client qualification scorecard, you can better manage your leads, ensuring you focus on the right clients who will bring in quality projects. Efficient lead management allows you to reduce wasted time, increase profitability, and improve overall business performance. Time's money, and by qualifying your leads more effectively, you're investing in the long-term health of your business. If you've got any questions, let me know. Don't forget, like and subscribe. One of these drops every week. Get across to Business for Builders VIP. Max at elitebusinessadvisory.com, specializing in coaching for general contractors and builders. Reach out to me for a complimentary coaching session. Let's talk about your business. Let's talk about how we might be able to do business to improve your business, create a better lifestyle. Go build a kick-ass business. See you on the next episode. Cheers.